I poured my heart and soul and everything that I got into this thing, and it doesn't work out, the business fails, it all collapses, then I just end up becoming you. Somebody who wakes up in the morning, goes to work, clocks in, spends his 8 hours, and then clocks out and goes home. All right, welcome back. I have a whole bunch of things that I've just been taking notes all week for that I want to kind of get into on this episode. So, without further ado, I'm just going to dive right in. I recently heard this quote, and it reminded me of like a whole bunch of stuff from like my early days when I first kind of entered into the kind of self development. Back in those days was like the self help books environment. Um, So the theory, the concept, the idea is most people don't talk to understand or to learn. They talk to protect what they think they already know. And I've talked about this in a previous episode or maybe in a different interview where our reticular activating system, it's a kind of the lizard brain or the mammalian brain that operates in the background that's processing all of our information because there's just so much info that's coming in at any given point in time. That is filtering through all of that information and using our previous experiences to paint what we know. And it also serves as a way to protect us from the dangers and the things or the perceived dangers that exist out there. And one of those perceived dangers is being wrong. And so your ego is what I use to describe that mammalian brain. It's like your identity, who you think you are, who you think I think you are. We covered that in a different episode, but it steps in to protect you. And so whenever you're like having conversations with your friends or your family, um, and you find if you've ever found that they turn into conflict more often than not, or you end up butting heads with the people that you're talking to, this might be you, where you're not talking to understand or to learn or to grow. You're talking to prove a point, to establish that you're right or that you know something. And that might just be instinct. That might just be your ego stepping in to protect you. And so the thing that it reminded me of, I think this was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so this isn't just a general rule of thumb to have like, good or easygoing conversations. It's more like a mantra or a rule that you should live by. And whenever you're having these types of conversations, especially when they get into things like religion or politics or some of those more touchy subjects, the idea is that you spend more time in that conversation asking questions and trying to understand where the other person's coming from before you assert your own understanding. And in reality, it may not even be that you ever have to assert your own understanding or tell people what you think, because that is just a selfish endeavor to try to um, establish a hierarchy or make yourself out to be an intelligent person or to prove somebody wrong or whatever. And I mean, in those types of situations, this is one of those like, are you trying to win or are you trying to be right? Or are you trying to have a good conversation? And good conversations are, just like a good tennis game. It's rallying back and forth and back and forth. And so, in that pursuit of trying to understand what somebody else is saying, not only are you going to learn, you're also going to come across to that person as more likable because whether or not you will be aware of it during that actual conversation, how that comes across to somebody else is they are interesting to you because you're seeking to learn more about them. You keep asking more questions. You kind of drive that conversation forward. This is kind of like improv, right? If I don't know if you're watching this, any of you have ever taken an improv class or any drama class or anything like that, but something good comes from the drama nerds, and that is that in an improv situation, the easiest way to keep the flow, to keep the rally, to make things interesting in whatever that improvisation is to yes and so you somebody creates a scenario and they are telling or they're trying to kind of paint the picture of the scene, the setting, whatever's going on, and so they say some things and you can either reject that and halt it and bring it to a stop and deny that that's true, and now it just becomes combative, and the improvisation and the scene doesn't really come to life. Or you can agree with whatever they've set up and then add to it. And so this is the beauty in that improvisation tactic. When you bring that into conversations and when you're trying to have that rally and that back and forth, the easiest way is to agree, or not necessarily agree, because, some of these things are like deep-seated values and morals and guiding north stars for you. So, like, barring all of that, this is not an exercise in you constantly shifting and changing your own personal moral, uh, perspective. It's more, an attempt to have conversations with people, get to know them, make them feel like they're valuable or seen or heard or whatever, and then, invite the opportunity for you to maybe inject some of your own things into it. And so that's the yes and theory. So if somebody is sharing their perspective on something, whether it's a touchy subject or not, hearing out what they have to say and then agreeing that that's how they see the world, not maybe how you see the world, agreeing that, oh, God, I can see how you see that. And then being curious, kind of building on that, maybe asking a question or applying whatever your perspective might be to that situation. So now you can kind of compound and yes and build up on that, and that makes for really good conversation. So I really thought that that was a interesting perspective when you're having those conversations with people. Um, Try to identify whether or not you're somebody who is talking to understand and learn somebody, or you're just talking to protect something that you know or something that you think you know. And it's a really cool opportunity to segue into another one of the concepts that was kind of rattling around in my brain all week is, your reticular activating system, that thing, your ego, it kind of steps in and protects you, does that things. It's filtering all that information. Well, this is interesting because you are the way that you are because of the models that you've had in your life. And so, to some degree, and I've said this before in another podcast when I was being interviewed, when I made a very bold statement that everything is your fault. Um, and I would love to elaborate on what I really meant when I said something like that. So let's kind of create the divide here. Some things maybe not necessarily entirely your fault, because yes, as a child or as a baby and your brain is still forming and molding, you don't even have your frontal lobe and logical thinking yet. The information that you're taking in, the way that your parents interact or the way that they don't interact, the way that your parents interact with their friends, the way that your aunts and uncles and other people, your teachers, the authority that's in your life, the way that those people behave became a model for you. And in your observation, you first see the way that people behave, the results that they get, and then you internalize that and look at ways that you can leverage these ideas, these thoughts, these concepts, these tools, these mannerisms, the way that people talk, the way that they converse. And then you try that stuff out. And as you're growing up, you try out a whole bunch of stuff. And um, this wasn't obvious to me until I had a child. We're not born with this innate sense of morality and what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. What we are born with is instinct to survive. And that instinct to survive drives us to do things to get what we need at first. And, um, you know, there's some arguments to be made for and against Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think that there is some merit to some of this stuff there, and some of the other stuff can be argued. But one of the core things that we need, aside from food, clothing, shelter, water, transportation, that sort of thing, is human connection. And this part here, when that part falls apart, is what leads to all other types of negative consequences in your life, whether that be addiction or um, pursuit of vices, that sort of thing. So the idea here is that when you see somebody do something and they get something that you want, you then conclude that if you do those things, you can also get what they got. And this is how we go through life modeling everything that we've ever seen. And so a good friend of mine who used to work with a long time ago, one day we were driving in the car and he was kind of sharing a little bit about his life. He grew up in the Middle East, and we had very differing upbringings. And when he was sharing some of his life stories with me, I was sharing some of my life stories with him. He said one of the most profound things I think anybody's ever said, which was we kind of go through life and chip off pieces of all of the people that we meet, and we take those pieces with us in our own adventures. And I thought that was a really poetic way to encapsulate what I'm talking about here, in that when you see people go through life and they do things and they get what they want, you go through life and you do those things and you get what you want. Sometimes you don't get what you want, or it wasn't as effective as you thought, but you form these opinions and these beliefs. And sometimes those beliefs could be malaligned, or they could be misaligned with what it is that is true, or what is most beneficial, what is most serving to you and the people that you care about and the people that you love. And so I thought that this was a really great way to highlight that some of the stuff that you have chipped off of the people in your journey um, were good things. They've served you, they served the people that you love. But some of those things that you chipped off, you might not have chipped them off on purpose. It might have been because of a collision, and some of that rubbed off on you. It might have been because some conflict and some of it kind of got on you and stuck to you. And so you take some of those negative and limiting beliefs with you in your life, and they affect the way that you interact with the world around you. And so, one of the things that I would challenge you to do, if you feel up to the task, is to pay attention to some of those negative and limiting beliefs when they come up. When you go to do something, and you are triggered, or you face fear, or you get anxiety, or you get a negative feeling in your body, try to look back at where that came from. What example do you have that has shown you that something negative can come from that, the taking that action, or whatever, doing that thing, or like, for example, like quitting a job, or breaking up with somebody who is toxic in your relationship, or um maybe taking a risk and starting a business, whatever those things are. Like, what is that negative belief that comes up? Where did that come from? And just ask yourself, is this mine? Is this serving me? And is this true? I think that's a even more important part of all of it. Is that belief actually true? Is it something that is actually real, or is it just something that maybe you heard from a friend of a friend of a friend? You wouldn't really know firsthand whether or not that's true. Um, I came across a video a couple of weeks ago of a guy talking about um, his journey in starting up a business, and he said, "I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take on this challenge. I'm gonna take the risk. I'm gonna do all the things. I'm gonna spend my money, and I'm going to try to create something from nothing. And if it doesn't work out, if everything I poured my heart and soul and everything that I got into this thing, and it doesn't work out, the business fails, it all collapses, then I just end up becoming you. Somebody who wakes up in the morning, goes to work, clocks in, spends his 8 hours, and then clocks out and goes home." And so the worst case scenario is that you just become a normal person, as opposed to being somebody who's financially free, who's able to set his own schedule, to be able to take on, all the challenges, and actually be in service of others from a place of, like, the way that you actually were meant to serve others, from your own talents, the things that you developed in your life, the things that you're good at. You get to help people with those things. And so what is the real risk, right? The real risk is not doing that thing and staying stuck and stagnant where you are, and just being a normal, regular, average guy or girl or whoever. You're just a normal, regular, average person. And so, what the I just thought that was so interesting to see that perspective of, like, hey, the worst case scenario is that I just become a normal person who does the regular, everyday job. Which reminds me of the Icarus, the story of Icarus. I'm sure you're probably familiar with this. Icarus flew too close to the sun, and it melted the wax that held his wings together, and he fell to his death. Now, everyone tells the tale of Icarus flying too close to the sun, but nobody ever talks about how his dad said to be careful not to fly so low that the water dampens your wings. And I think that that's such a powerful um, reframing of an idea. We think we strive to be great, and it's only inevitable that once you reach some level of greatness that you just fall apart and everything falls apart. But there is a yin to that yang. There is a darkness to that light, which is if you fly too low, you don't get anywhere. You collapse, you still fall, you still drown, you still um, end up with nothing. And so that's the interesting part about this is like finding a balance between the pursuit of the thing that gives you meaning, taking on responsibility that's bigger than yourself, turning your attention from how you feel to how you make other people feel. I think that's really important. Depression and anxiety are selfish feelings. And if that triggers you and if that makes you feel like you have to defend something, I want you to just pay attention to that right there. It is a feeling of self. It is a feeling of looking inside of yourself and not being happy with who you are, how you're showing up, what you've accomplished, how you look to other people, however it is, whatever it is, it's this crushing feeling of not being good enough, the anxiety of, I feel like I should be doing something, but I'm not doing something. I don't know why I feel this way, and all of those questions coming in. And trust me, I know what these feelings are like. I vividly remember walking with my girlfriend across the Peace Bridge here in Calgary, getting halfway across and collapsing on the ground, thinking I was having a heart attack just because I was going through such an intense sense of panic and anxiety attack. Um, she took me to the hospital. I ended up sitting in the hospital for 4 or 5 hours, only for them to kick me to the curb and tell me that it had nothing to do with my heart. It had everything to do with my mental state. So coming back from that for me, and this is why I think this is really important and powerful to share with you, is the thing that saved me, the thing that changed everything for me, the thing that broke and cured the depression and took away the anxiety was taking the attention off of myself and how I felt and turning my attention on others and how I could make them feel, how I could serve them. And I was given this anecdote from somebody else. Sometimes to help ourselves, we need to help others. And I think that there's an incredible power in that. Jordan Peterson talks about this from the perspective of if you're in that place, you need to do something, you need to take action, whatever it is, a small, tiny little action, anything. It could be anything, but it has to be taking on a responsibility greater than yourself, something worthy of fighting for, something that gives you meaning, and something that gives you a purpose. And so if you don't know what that is, or you don't know where to find that, the first step is to take the attention off of yourself and turn it to other people and look at ways that you can be in service of other people. And I believe that our purpose comes from us finding things that are interesting, developing our talents through those interests, and then using those talents and leveraging our skills to serve other people. And so for me, I spent a great deal of time being selfish, being focused on myself and how I felt and what I was going to get out of it, and all those negative things that come along with that. And that's why I was depressed and, just a guinea pig for all the pharmaceuticals and whatever else was out there, the therapy, the conversations and this and that. Um, and the only thing that I found that changed all of that was taking the attention off of myself. Stop. I had to stop having the therapy conversations everywhere I went because all it ever did was just remind me of all of the things I didn't like about myself. So taking the attention off myself and putting it out there and putting it on other people, using my skills and talents to serve others was my salvation. That's where I found my pathway out of the darkness, the ladder out of the pit that I was in. And I would challenge you to do the same thing. And just, for the next week, if you focused on helping other people instead of yourself, pay attention to how that makes you feel. Pay attention to the way that your heart feels when you've done something good for somebody else for no reason other than just to do good for other people. And when you do that more consistently over a longer period of time, you will come to find that all of that goodness will come back to you tenfold. Everything that you were fighting for to take from other people will just naturally flow to you so that you can give to others. And I talked about this in my previous podcast about how we become the conduit. Our cup becomes so full that it overflows, and we draw that energy from God and from the universe, and we give that out to other people. And when we become that conduit, at first, it's going to be really difficult. Your pipes are going to be really clogged. It's going to be hard to force that out of you, but I challenge you to do that. And as you do more and more and more, but your pipe gets cleaner and clearer, your vision and your perspective becomes cleaner and clearer, and you see things that you never saw before. And this is what I talk about. People I don't necessarily think are inherently better or worse. I do think that some people will be more skilled or more talented at things than others. But I look at the path of enlightenment like a kind of like a tower, and there's a lot of people kind of congregated in the lobby on the ground floor, not really doing anything, not really wanting to, because it's not necessary to. But as you kind of elevate in your perspectives and your frames and your paradigms that you operate in, you kind of come up in floors, and then you can't see from the ground floor what you can see from the 10th floor, and even in that, you can't see from the 10th floor what you can see from the 100th floor. And so the higher up in that energy that you vibrate in, the more abundance that you bring into the world, the broader your perspective becomes, the more you see that you didn't see before. So if you can't see it right now, and I know the pushback is some of those initial thoughts are like, yeah, I give to people all the time, and all they do is take from me, and all they do is this and this and this. And okay, but like, I'm just going to pause you right there. What was your expectation in giving to somebody else? If your expectation in giving to somebody else or serving somebody else is that they will then in turn have to serve you, then you're just transacting. You're just trading good deed for good deed. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is genuinely doing something without needing praise, without needing confirmation, without needing validation, without needing a thank you. Do it because you know that in your heart you will be a better person for doing a good thing. Allow that to fill you with a sense of pride. Don't resist the pride in an attempt to humble yourself to fit in and stay a zebra with all the other zebras. We, as kind of a pack or a herd mentality, have to stay inside of the tribe, and staying inside of the tribe means we can't stand out from the tribe. If we do, we end up getting picked off by a lion. The interesting thing about that analogy is that the world needs lions and the world needs zebras, and sometimes to break out of that mold of being in that depression and that anxiety, you have to take a risk of stepping outside of what your current tribe thinks of you, so that you can elevate yourself, come up in the floors in the tower, see something differently that you didn't see before. Now, if that causes you to want to go back and serve and help other people, try to drag them out of the mud, you can do that, but I would caution you um, in doing more damage than good if you hadn't fully taken that entire journey of serving yourself, because there's a lot of fucked up perspectives that are out there that come from places, from very extreme places, from people who are very hurt or from people who are very confused, and so, like, even me, when you're listening to the things that I'm saying, and um taking what I have and going out into the world, what I would challenge you to do is just look at it from your own perspective. Just go out there and see if what I'm saying is true, and if it is, then take it, use it, make it useful to yourself, make it useful to the people around you. But don't just take what I say verbatim and then believe it to be absolute true. You need to build that stack of undeniable evidence for yourself. So it's in doing those things, and it's in serving others, and it's in becoming that powerful being that you build that bulletproof confidence, uh, by stacking up that evidence, that you are who you think you are who you say you are, as opposed to being that transactional person who's just here to give and then get, give and then get, give and then get. So stop keeping score. Go out there and help as many people as you can, and just see how that makes you feel. And if it makes you feel good, then don't step on that. Don't squish it. Don't try to make it smaller than it is. Let it become something, because the more that you expand, the more that your pipe is able to, the more capacity your pipe has, the more you're able to do, and the better you're going to feel for that. So that becomes, the spiral effect or the snowball effect, where the more you do, the bigger it becomes. So, which is a great way to segue into this other concept, theory that I recently discovered, called Mary's black and white room. So imagine there is a baby that is born in a room, and in that room there's only ever black and white. There's never any color. the lighting and everything else that they use it to make sure that it's only black and white, and Mary only ever sees black and white. As she grows up, she reads books and she watches television shows and she sees all kinds of movies where they describe and they teach about colors. And everything that she knows about colors is just theories and concepts and things that she's extracted from these books and movies and documentaries and all that kind of thing. And then one day, Mary gets old enough, and the door to her black and white room unlocks, and she steps outside and she sees color for the first time. The question is, has she learned something new by seeing color herself? I think this is an interesting concept to explore as a thought experiment because there's only so much that you can do with the information that somebody gives you. Some information I give you, a therapist gives you, another guru on the internet gives you, whoever, whatever information you get, you can read it in a book, you can watch it in a movie, you can see it on a documentary, you can take training. It's just information. And you can have all of the information in the world, and you can be well versed in that information, and you can tell other people about that information. But unless you go out into the world and observe that information in real life and experience that information for yourself, and then use that experience to shape and mold your understanding of the experience or of the information, you're never truly going to know the information. So it's in the experience that we have that we do finally truly understand a concept or an idea or a theory or a principle. So that's why I always say, don't just take what I say and think that it's 100% gospel or true. Take what I say, go out into the world, try to observe it from an objective perspective, from a place where, hey, I don't know if this is or isn't real. I don't care if it is or isn't real. I just want to see what aligns in what I've heard, what I've seen, what I've learned to what actually exists out there in the world. And if you start to see some congruence between what I see or from what I've said and what you're seeing, then maybe you can start applying some of the principles that I talk about and how you can improve your state, improve your condition, improve your life. And then hopefully, this is my bigger goal is to have a ripple effect where you can then affect the people around you in your circles and your social setting where you're doing good and you're serving others from a place of selflessness, not from a place of transacting with others. So I thought that was a really cool way to just take the idea of information and make it actually useful for you. So I'm going to do a hard left on this episode here and get into some men's issues that seem to be floating around in the ether that a lot of people are talking about, and I don't think there's a unifying perspective on this whole thing. One of the concepts or principles that I teach a lot of my clients is that you will never know in a million years what is actually going on inside of my head. You will only know what I want you to know, which is based on what I choose to share with you about who I am, what I've gone through, what my experiences in this world have been. And that's because you can't be me. You can't be in my skin or in my brain or in my mind or in my spirit and be with me 24/7, every single day of the week, every second of every minute. You can't because you are living your own experience. So we are all individually having experiences on what it's like to be a human being in this world, um, to be a soul in this meat suit traversing a rock floating through infinite space at speeds we couldn't even begin to fathom in a universe that's so large our minds could not even remotely come close to understanding the size. So because of that truth that your experience and my experience are going to be completely different, um, it's really difficult to come to a universal truth, a truth that applies to all things no matter what. And when you have somebody who is confident, they tend to speak about things with surety. They tend to say things as if they are true when sometimes they aren't true, but they believe them to be true. And so they are able to say these things uh, unshakenly. And because they do that, we as human beings, we love authority. we we gravitate towards authority, and we tend to believe people who speak authoritatively. I say all of that to say this, which is probably going to be one of the most controversial things that I've ever said. A man's problem is comes from a male's experience in the world, and a woman cannot speak to that experience because she doesn't know what it's like to be a man or experience life as a man in this world. Just like you don't know what it's like to experience my life, and I don't know what it's like to experience your life. So there are women who are saying that the solution to this men's loneliness epidemic is to open up and be more vulnerable with your partner and share all of your thoughts and feelings. And um, that's just not true. It works for women because women have that ex- they are given that experience when they grow up. They operate in a completely different social environment than men do. Men bond over things, and in bonding over those things or those activities, when we have a shared experience, we are able to feel more connected to other people. Where women bond over um, talking about those experiences and sharing thoughts and feelings. So when a woman is telling a man to act like a woman, it's not going to solve the problem for a man. How do you actually go about addressing the men's loneliness epidemic? Well, first we got to look at what loneliness actually is. Where does that come from? How do we get there? And once we know the map, like what's on the map, once we know how we've arrived at that place, we can just go in the opposite direction to get out of it. So there are some, and this is, I love this, the call back to earlier in the podcast episode. There are limiting beliefs that exist out there in the world that men must be a rock, men must be a warrior, men must be a fighter and a survivor, and they must do everything themselves. These are limiting beliefs. These beliefs are what keep you where you are. So looking through that Rolodex or that list of ideas that you hold to be true, anywhere in there, if it's on that list that you can't talk about what you're going through with another man, that is stopping you from going out and talking to another man about your problems. Now, the reason that is because men have a very competitive nature. We have to compete for everything. We have to compete for our jobs and our roles. We have to compete for hierarchy in those jobs or roles. In that hierarchy, it offers us better opportunities for mating. And then when we have more abundance in our work and money and resources, that gives us better chances at mating. And so we're constantly competing for all of those things, attention and time and money and all of that. And because we're in that competition, it stops us from collaborating. And so this is a paradigm shift that I would challenge you to go out into the world and experiment with this idea that instead of being competitive with the men that are around you, we don't need that anymore. We're in such a state of abundance that it's not necessary for us to compete. It used to be true that we had to compete at the level that we did because in a tribe, there was only like maybe 30 to 50 people. And in that tribe, there was only maybe 10 mating opportunities and maybe 10 mating males. And the hierarchy was established that the lower males can't mate with the females because that's just the way that it was, right? So that biology still lives in us, although it's not true anymore. There is an abundance of people around us at any given time. Um, there's tons of single women who would be happy to have a conversation with you if you got out of your head and were able to approach them and have that conversation. So, okay, instead of operating now from that primitive place of competition, you operate from a new paradigm of collaboration, the wingman, in service of others, which is a really great callback. Your goal changes from I have to be the big macho strong man that when he goes to the club can fight every single guy here, and you got to like eyeball everybody, stand in the corner with you, arms crossed and all mean mugging and shit. Instead of that, if you operated from a place of abundance, as in you weren't competing with any of the men in that room for attention, and instead you operated from a place of how can I help other people have a good time in this room. Now you're collaborating with the men. And now in that collaboration, um, it elevates your status, which is status and power we'll get into in another conversation. But it elevates your status, it elevates your power, it elevates you in the room, and you become in the hierarchy a leader, somebody who's able to lead through your energy. So, perfect example of this, I was on another podcast a few years back, and one of my friends on that show, he's a bigger, huskier guy, tall, muscly, very intelligent, wealthy guy. And I'm saying this all to just kind of give you a sense of like this guy's well accomplished. He's got his shit together. He's a good guy, very handsome. He's walking down the aisle in a Walmart. I think he was looking for deodorant or something like that. And in that aisle was another man of equal size, caliber, condition. He was another just a big dude, and he was in the aisle. And when he entered, they kind of locked eyes, and there was a moment of tension where he was confronted with this choice of like he could feel his body tense up, he could feel this threat, which isn't a threat. You're just a dude in Walmart looking for some deodorant. But he could feel that tension, and instead of operating from that place of those initial feelings, he was able to sit with it, release it back into the ether, and instead of competing with the man that was in the aisle, I can't remember exactly verbatim what he said, but it was something along the lines of the guy was comparing the two. He's like, "Hey, this one here, my wife really loves that. She says it smells like a really expensive brand of cologne or something. I can't remember, but she really likes that one. I think you should go with that." And so in doing that, he broke the tension. The guy was like, oh, he softened up. He was very grateful. They laughed about it. They had a little bit of a chat, and they continued on about their way and parted ways, and there was never any conflict. And so instead of operating from the tension, because it happens, right? That's the reticular activating system jumping in, doing its job, filtering things. This big, strong, threatening guy that's in the aisle with you. You're also a big, strong, threatening guy. There's tension. It exists. Okay, let's acknowledge that. Let's dismiss it because how much of this is true and how much of it is reality. And then from that place, after taking a breath, we can operate from a place of collaboration. So that's the challenge, right? It's really about you're in your head thinking these things that you think are absolutely 100% true, that if you go out there in the world, there are going to be men that are going to, that aren't going to be receptive to you operating from that place. Now, okay, granted, I'm going to just add an asterisk to this. There is a caveat. Love this line from Alfred in The Black Knight. Some people just want to watch the world burn. There are guys out there who are still operating from a paradigm of uh, they're the man, and the only way to stay the man is to chop other people's poppies down instead of elevating themselves or growing themselves. They cut everybody around them down. Avoid those people, as much as you possibly can. But it's not to say that when you go into these places that they're not going to be there and they're not going to shit test you. So this brings me into the other side of things, which is uh, establishing and holding frame. Now, frame is a very abstract and obscure concept. Owen Cook talks about this a lot. If you want to go deeper on this, go look him up. He's got some really great seminars on this. But the gist of it is that these guys operate from the lens, from the frame, from the perspective that they're the shit no matter what. Nothing anybody ever says is ever going to change that. And so when they go out into places and people, enter their atmosphere, they try to control that frame, and they do that by belittling somebody, making jokes, making fun of people, bullying, all of those things. We kind of put it into the bucket of bullying, but that's what they're doing is frame control. What they're trying to do is establish for all the other people that, hey, I'm the fucking man and this guy's not, or that guy's not. And that's because of that hierarchy thing. If he's higher up in that hierarchy, he has better mating chances. And it just so happens that that's actually true. And this is where we get those negative beliefs again, the false belief that women fall for the assholes. No, they fall for the guys who hold frame. So it's not that they're handsome or good looking or this or that. I mean, if you spend enough time looking at some of their eyes are this and their noses are too big or their ears stick out or their hairline's falling back, it doesn't matter. The point is not to be there to chop their poppy down. The point is to just understand that they're operating with the same set of things that you have. You just don't know the rules to the game. So the rules to the game are understanding that frame control. Now, the hard part about this is establishing your frame, building from that, and And when you operate in these places and somebody tests your frame, you are able to um, stay in your frame without having to break theirs. So I love this, the improv thing that I talked before, yes, and so if somebody says that, makes a joke about you, the easiest, fastest way to diffuse that is to agree with it, play it up, make it funnier, and then pass it back to them. And then you begin riffing on it, and it doesn't matter if you're the butt of the joke for a small period of time. What they're trying to figure out is whether or not you can hold your frame. And so if you can't hold your frame and you break, you collapse, you fall back into your own false belief that you're not the shit, you're not the man, and that you're actually just this loser who can't get friends, can't get women, da 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 da, whatever negative self-talk you have, that frame, your frame collapses, and now they maintain their hierarchy, and then you fail the test. And that's all this is. It's just a shit test. Men do it, women do it more. This happens in the rejection that you get when you go out and you approach a woman in a public place and you ask for their number. They're gonna shit test you and see if you can handle who they are as a person, and they might make fun of you. They might make you feel like shit. They might just they might even play the nice person, just be like, "Oh, it's so nice, but I got a boyfriend," or whatever. However they reject you, um, that will, if you aren't strong enough, collapse your frame. So that's some of the work that I do, just kind of as a sideline, shameless plug here. If you want help to figure that part out, that's the type of coaching that I do. Um, but also, I created an app that you can get for free called the Self Value Assessment. What this will do is ask you a whole bunch of questions about who you are, what you know about yourself, and then in that, it will infer with you why you're a valuable person, what you bring to the table, and how you can then operate in the world. And one of the really good things that it does is there's a tool built in that is a frame reset. So when you are going into a challenging situation, a first date, a job interview, or whatever that thing is, you jump into the app, open it up, share a little bit about what you're about to go into, and then what it's going to do is going to pull from all of the things that we know about you and what's valuable about you, and then remind you in a way that's going to be useful so that when you enter that place, you can maintain your frame and your state a little bit better. This is really cool. One of the things that I used to do, so I used to perform, I was a rapper and a singer in a group called Nerds and Cool Clothing. We did hip hop music, and I'm a guy that, and it probably doesn't come across this way, but when I was younger, I had stage fright. I still get stage fright, even to this day. Whenever I have to go out and speak, I still get the nervous jitters and things like that. Um, but one of the things that we used to do in the group uh, was rehearse all of our songs, and we would have the songs playing. We would be rapping and singing along with them, but we would also go and find on YouTube. There's a couple of really great tracks that you can listen to. There's a WWE crowd booing somebody in the ring. It is like an hour long. I don't know why somebody would make an hour long booing tracks. It's whatever. But what we do is we play that in the background of us rehearsing, so that in the event that somebody out there in the crowd started booing us, it wouldn't affect us. Now I'm going to tell you, even though I knew it was fake, even though we all knew that it wasn't real, and it was still just like a track that was playing in the background, it was very difficult at first to practice, stay focused, and do the job with that thing playing in the background, because it did have a visceral effect on us. It chipped away at that mammalian brain of ours, and really, really made us feel the feelings of what it would be like in that situation. And so it was hard in those moments to overcome it. But then, and it's only ever happened to me once. There was just one guy in the crowd who just wasn't feeling it, and in spite of him, the show must go on. I was still able to continue my performance and do a really good job, and it didn't affect me. And when I got off stage, somebody was asking me like, "How did you do that?" And this is what it kind of came back to is I practiced it enough that it didn't affect me anymore. And so this is a combination of exposure therapy, just doing the stuff even though you're scared, do it anyways. And then on the other side of it is like understanding that you can practice throwing a ball the wrong way a million times. It's not going to make you throwing a ball. It's not going to make you better at throwing the ball. If you practice throwing the ball the right way, you don't have to practice as much to get the throw correct. And so this is the difference between the guys who are at an elite level versus the guys that are just kind of average at doing whatever they do, whether it's throwing a ball or, going out there into the social game and trying to play. So going out there into the world and holding that frame and operating from a place of collaboration and understanding where you really are valuable and then not letting anybody else's opinion affect you in any way is how you're going to defeat that loneliness that you're experiencing. It will allow you to go out into the world and find other people and connect with other people. Now, some people aren't going to mesh with you. Some people just aren't going to be your kind of people. But if you dress up, okay, I love this. I got a deck of cards right here, actually. If you go out into the world and you're a two of clubs, but you dress up as a king of spades and you go out in the world and people start liking you because you're the king of spades, you're still this two. You're still this person. So when they do get to know you and this kind of fades away and the two starts peeking out and they're like, ew, gross, I don't like that. You have to like tuck yourself back in so that that two isn't there. Um, isn't that worse than just being the two and a king saying, hey, you're not good enough? And no, I'm just not a king. I'm gonna king's probably a bad analogy, but I'm just not this one. I'm this one. That's all we're trying to do. You're just trying to go through the world. You're going to go through the world and you're going to find other twos. And when you find another two, the two of you can hang out. And now you can do two things instead of trying to pretend to be a king thing and not be and not fit in or not feel like you belong. So the challenge here is to understand like, hey, what I know about myself is true and what other people think about me, they can't know. And this is a perfect analogy. If you've never tried my spaghetti, could you tell people how it tastes? You've had some spaghetti before, so you know how some spaghetti tastes, but if you've had mine, you're not gonna know how my spaghetti tastes until you try it. And so if you go out there in the world and you're like, "Oh, no, that's spaghetti, that's gross." How can you speak with that level of authority? Even better analogy. If you've never seen this movie, um, let's just say it's called The Battle on the South Front. If you've never seen Battle on the South Front, how can you speak about it? How can you tell people that it's good or bad? How can you make a judgment just because you saw a cover of it or just because you saw that? And I get this, don't judge a book by its cover. The reality is you've not seen the movie. So I want you to take this inside of you and understand that other people have not seen your movie. They've not experienced your life. They don't know what you know. They don't know what you're cool, the parts where you're cool. They don't know what you're good at. They don't know your skills or your talents or all that other stuff. And if they don't want to take the time to know that, that's cool. That doesn't matter. They're not a two. They don't fit. And that's fine. You need to be okay with that also. Not everybody's going to like you. And I get that that's a cliche, but you have to become comfortable with that fact so that you can go out into the world and find people that fit in who you are. The last one I'm going to do on this one is, let's say I come up to you and I'm like, hey, I hate your stupid blue hair. Now, I'm sorry for anybody that was watching this that has blue hair. For you guys, I hate your stupid black hair. But let's say somebody came up to you and said that, but you don't have blue hair. How is that going to affect you? Is that going to make you feel sad? Is it going to make you feel like you're not good enough? Is that going to make you feel dumb for having blue hair that you don't actually have? Probably not, because it's not true. So if somebody makes an assertion or makes a call or makes a judgment on you and they say that thing to you and it's in a social setting, it's like it's natural for you to like for that to impact you and for you to feel a feeling. It's just that feeling that you feel has been a habitual feeling that you've had every time somebody says that thing about you. And the only way to break that habit is to feel something different. And so to feel something different, we have to change what we understand about ourselves. We have to change what we believe about ourselves so that when we do go out into those places and people say that thing about us, it just bounces off of us or it just goes right through us or it goes right by us because it doesn't register. It doesn't clock. It's not in the things. It's not on the roster of things that we understand about ourselves. It's not true. I'm not that way or I'm not that thing. Yeah, I got called gay my whole life when I was growing up, just because like I had a best friend. We spent all of our time together, and that just became like a thing that everybody could say. I have a kid. I've been married once. I've had 3 long-term relationships my entire life. I've only ever slept with women. It's not true. So when somebody says that about me, the thing that I like to do is just play it up and sauce it up and act maybe a little bit more gay than I was acting already, and make it funny. And usually it gets a laugh, and if that guy doesn't isn't playing along or isn't willing to collaborate because now I've broken his frame, that's okay as well. I don't need to follow him down that path. I can stay on my own and still hold my own frame and still keep my own understanding of myself. So it's different for men than it is for women. I can't speak to a woman's experience because I've never had it. I don't know what it's like to be a woman, and much the same way. So I want you, as you listen to this, as you watch this, when you hear a woman try to explain to you how you as a man should be in the world, just remember that there are elements of the male experience or the man experience that she just will never understand, because her experience has been different. It's not good or bad, it just is. And I just want to share that with you so that you understand that. Yeah, now in the interest of keeping congruency for my episodes, because I tend to like jot down a whole bunch of stuff, and then I'll ramble on about anything and everything that I can, and try to keep it as cohesive as possible without letting my ADHD take me off track. I do have more stuff, but I don't think it's going to fit into this episode, so I'm going to save that for the next one. In that next episode, I'm going to be talking about a man's role in the world, and in particular situations, especially as it relates to emotions, and emotional dumping and information and stuff like that. I'm also going to talk about courting, relationships, why that's killing your vibes in either one of those situations, whether you're courting or you're in relationships. And I will dive a little bit deeper into status and hierarchy and power, and kind of show you where all of that kind of fits into the grand scheme of things. As always, I want to keep making stuff for you. So if you've gotten some value out of this, or if there's questions that you have, drop a comment. Let me know what's going on. Like this, share it, save it, whatever you got to do. It helps me get in front of more people. And I hate to be that guy that's pandering to that, but I truly do want to affect as many lives as I possibly can and have the ripple effect. I want to share this with the people that matter to me. And if you end up in that list of people, then that's incredible. So, a couple of ways that you can get some freebies from me. If you go to devonajones.com, in the menu, look for resources. There's a few free resources. There's an identity map to help you kind of understand your current shadow self, the one that's not serving, and then identify and map out who your ideal self would be. And then it provides some exercises that you can do to create some alignment between those two versions of yourself so you can become a more congruent version of who you are. There is that self-value assessment that helps you understand who you are, and then maintain that frame as you go out into the world. And then if relationship stuff is what's on your mind right now, that's also something that I can help with. There is an attachment assessment that's there that helps you kind of break down who you are as a person in a relationship, how you're showing up, and how you can break some of those bad habits and start forming some of the new ones and make your relationships a little bit more robust. And then, yeah, I do a free roadmap call. So if you want to talk, you want to chat, you got some questions, you want to go a little bit deeper, I hope my first one's always free. There's the mastermind, and until we meet again, go out there and kick some ass.